From a curricular standpoint, part of my job is to infuse public speaking into the K through 12 curriculum so that when a student graduates from our school, they're already successful public speakers. The Potomac School has identified 5 life skill areas as additional focus for our students. Today, we have with us 4 accomplished sophomore and junior debaters. All 4 students, despite their youth, have qualified to the NSDA National Championships in June, automatically putting them in the top 3% of debate students in the United States. Please welcome to the stage Catherine Bliss Davis, Caitlin Mayer, Christian Harold, and Charlie Judd. For the debate this afternoon, the pro team will consist of Catherine Bliss Davis, who is a junior, and Caitlin Mayer, a sophomore, who is also a member of Team USA Debate, one of the 24 American high school students who represent the United States in international competition. The con team is comprised of 2 sophomores, Charlie Judd and Christian Harold. I should mention that Christian has given a number of public speeches on women's rights and race issues, including a speech before a women's group at the 2016 Democratic National Convention. The topic of today's debate and wording of a resolution is important to debaters. Resolved, in the United States, public college and university tuition will be paid for by the government. I will repeat that. Resolved, in the United States, public college and university tuition will be paid for by the government. This debate is a shortened version of a high school public forum style debate. And please welcome to start the debate from the pro team, Bliss Davis.
We affirm the resolved, in the United States, public college and university tuition will be paid for by the government. We'd like to begin with one key observation. The cost of college tuition in America is growing at an incredible rate. Camila Maldonado of Forbes writes in 2018 that college tuition is skyrocketing at a rate 8 times faster than wages. Contention 1 is relieving the burden of student debt. When students can't afford the exorbitant cost of college, they are forced to take out loans instead. Student loans are by far the most dominant type of financial aid for college. The Libido Foundation finds that during the 2012-2013 school year alone, about 10 million college students took out loans, a 66% increase from a decade earlier. Ali Bidwell of US News reports in 2014 that the average bachelor's degree holder takes 21 years to pay off their loans. Student debt plays an oversized role in perpetuating inequality in this country, and it does so in 2 important ways. The first is discrimination against students of color. Robert Kelkin of Seton Hall explains that minority students tend to have higher debt burdens and have more difficulty paying these loans off than other students. Judith Clayton and Jung Lee of Columbia University empirically confirmed this in 2016, estimating that Black students have almost $53,000 in loans 4 years after graduation, almost double the amount of their white counterparts. Sophia Quinton of The Atlantic writes in 2015 that disproportionate levels of student loan debt create a discouragingly steep path to financial security for young African Americans. The second impact is perpetuating poverty. Gail Marks Jarvis of the Reuters writes in 2018 that the majority of students who default on their loans come from lower income backgrounds and quit college before graduating. Fortunately, implementing universal public college reverses the cycle of poverty by reducing the financial burden. Eliminating student debt would be key to combating inequality and poverty in America, which Stephen Bezrucha of Boston U finds is the result of about 1/3 of the deaths in this country. Contention 2 is economic participation. Americans are struggling to afford to send their children to college. Janet Laveau of Edward Jones finds in 2015 that 83% of Americans say they cannot afford the expense of a college education. Meredith Coloner of New York Times writes that the cost of college is a major obstacle to graduating on time. Many students can't afford to continue or become overwhelmed from working long hours to try to pay for their education, while studying for a degree. And a solution exists. The Georgetown Center finds in 2016 that a free college plan like the one proposed by Hillary Clinton would increase enrollment at public universities by up to 22%. Doug Letterman of Inside Higher Education concludes in 2016 that using a median estimate, the government paying tuition would mean an additional 2.5 million Americans going to public college. Now, this benefits the public in two ways. First is decreasing crime. A study by NYU in 2015 indicates that increased college graduation rates correspond to a significant decrease in the crime rate. A 5% increase in the college graduation rate, for instance, produces an 18.7% reduction in the homicide rate, The second is increasing the workforce. According to the Georgetown University Center on Education and the Workforce in 2014, 4 out of 5 of the fastest growing occupations today, such as STEM and healthcare, require high levels of post-secondary education. In today's society, integration into the workforce necessitates a college degree. So for all these reasons, we are proud to affirm.
We negate the resolved. In the United States, public college and university tuition will be paid for by the government. As a framework, we believe it is the burden of the pro team to prove that free college is the best means to solve the college accessibility crisis. Contention 1 is higher quality education. If we affirm and make college tuition free, the quality of public college decreases dramatically. Noah Smith of Bloomberg finds in 2017 that the only feasible way to implement free college is with price caps, so colleges can't exploit the deep pockets of the government. Schools will be forced to slash the salaries of teachers and fire employees in order to conform with these price caps, decreasing the overall quality of education as many professors will leave colleges for the private sector and classrooms will become overpopulated. Problematically, funding for public college is already at a tipping point, as Aaliyah Wong of The Atlantic writes in 2018 that colleges have been forced to reduce the quality of education due to funding constraints. Unfortunately, there is a causal relationship between the quality of education and the success of students, as a 2017 study by Harvard University and the University of California, Berkeley, found that students tend to be better off when colleges focus their spending on the quality of their education rather than reducing the price. The impact is a lower quality education that drastically impacts the abilities of students to compete in the ever-growing demands of the workforce. A study by the New York Times found that many college students tested over 4 years showed no advancement in crucial skills such as critical thinking, complex reasoning, and writing from their sophomore to senior years, which researchers directly contributed to a low quality of higher education. Our second contention is economic inequality. Jeff Abernathy with the LA Times writes in 2019 that the entire concept of free college is inherently geared toward higher income students, as eliminating the cost of college tuition would do little to nothing to reduce the cost of college. Costs such as dorms, transportation, and textbooks would still be a burden on low-income families. Matthew Chingos of Brookings quantifies in 2016 that even if college became free, the bottom 50% of income levels at public universities would still have to pay a whopping $18 billion in other non-tuition expenses. Chingos furthers that the only way wealthy students, not only would wealthy students receive more money at a free college, but they would be more likely to be admitted to colleges as well, further increasing this disparity. Smith of the Chicago Tribune states in 2017 that because tuition only covers around 1/5 of college revenue, prestigious state colleges and universities will be more likely to admit higher income students to keep up their status, as well as those who are able to donate and give more back to the school outside of basic costs. The impact is increased inequality. When low-income students are pushed out of college in favor of richer ones, it has a devastating effect on their economic mobility. Hans Johnson of the PPIC finds in 2016 that college graduates have better labor market success than less educated adults, including substantially higher wages and lower unemployment rates. In the end, lack of access to a higher education would only perpetuate the income inequality that plagues our nation. For the sake of providing a higher quality, more equal, and just education system for all Americans, we are proud to negate.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Give me your clock. Yeah. All right. Okay. Okay, can I have the first question?
Sure.
So first, can we both agree that college degree is necessary to participate in the workforce today?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, excellent. So with that, can you please explain why price caps are going to be the most probable outcome of instituting free college?
Yeah, so essentially what we told you in case is that what you're going to see if college is free, the government's going to have to set price caps on colleges so that they can exploit the government for extra money. So you're going to see tuition remaining stagnant. So considering spending on public colleges already at an all-time low, how do you expect free college to be financed?
Okay, absolutely. So first, I think we're going to see a remorphing of the current financial aid system, which is extreme. And beyond that, there are several different measures we could take, such as increasing taxation on the wealthy and reforming other structures such as that. So I think there's plenty of ways we could finance their program.
Considering we currently have a majority Republican Congress who've very clearly stated that there will be no such tax reforms for public college, like how do you think this could actually happen? Like, do you have another reason?
I don't have a do.
Okay, what I'm trying to tell you is that this public college is just not feasible to be financed.
Okay, sure. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Okay, so why is tuition increasing right now?
Because the government is actually cutting back on spending for public colleges. We've seen over the course of since 2000, college funding for public universities being drastically reduced.
Okay, we disagree, but my partner will address that in rebuttal. Do you have a question for me?
Yeah, so can you agree that the purpose of college is to prepare students for the workforce?
I would agree. I would agree, absolutely.
Yeah, so then how can you justify the fact that free college, which would lead to drastic decreases in the quality of education and less students being prepared for the real world, how can you justify that?
Again, we don't agree that we're going to see price caps in the future. My partner will address that in cross-ex. But my next question for you
but in general,
sure.
Can you agree that education will decrease, the quality of education will decrease?
No, I do not agree with that.
Okay.
So I have a question for you. So isn't it better to mitigate the cost of college than to leave it where it is?
No, like what we told you, this Harvard study, the California Harvard study that we read to you in case, it shows you that students benefit in the long run more when colleges focus on increasing their education rather than reducing the price of admission.
And what about when they don't go to college?
Students who don't go to college? Can you repeat that, sorry?
Oh, sorry, we're out of time.
Oh, okay.
Oh, good.
Stephen Wolf of NIH determined in 2007 that college education and mortality are linked, and estimated that between 1996 and 2002, correcting disparities in education-associated mortality by granting more students access to a college education would have saved almost 1,200,000 more lives than all advances in biomedicine during that time. Because access to college education can be life or death, Bliss and I stand so proud to affirm. I'll be addressing Charlie and Christian's arguments, beginning with their framework. They say that it's our burden to prove that free college is the best way to solve for college accessibility. Yet we think that if our side ultimately creates a world that's merely better than the status quo that they're defending, we have unquestionably fulfilled our burden. Alternately, their burden is to prove that the status quo is uniquely better than our world. Moving on, their first contention tells you that if free college becomes a reality, the government will place price caps on college tuition. Two responses. Firstly, this argument is not unique to their worlds. What they don't tell you is that this is occurring in the status quo only on a state level. A joint study by Deeming and Walters of Harvard University and the National Bureau of Economic Research, right in 2017, that 17 states have actively imposed price controls under the forms of tuition caps on public colleges at least once between 1990 and 2013. Amanda Ripley of The Atlantic writes in 2018 that this problem exists in the status quo because there is no central mechanism to control price increases, something that neither side of this debate changes. So because neither world solves this problem, this means that price caps are inevitable in both worlds. They don't prove how their impact is unique. But second, even if you want to buy their impact, the price caps will mar the quality of education. We would assert that a low-quality education is preferable to none at all. A college degree has become the new high school diploma. Steve Goldstein of MarketWatch notes in 2018 that 90% of new jobs are going to those with a college degree, while CBS News reported in 2017 that the earnings gap between college grads and everyone else has reached its widest point on record. Just having a college degree, quality aside, makes Americans instantly more qualified for significantly more jobs. So in their world, millions of students are worse off because they are unable to access an education of high or low quality. Our world solves for this. But moving on to their second contention of income inequality, on their analysis about external costs. Firstly, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Our side still does something to mitigate the biggest factor in college expenses for millions of students, even if we don't cover 100% of costs for everyone. But we would assert that the financial aid system is going to be morphing, because when the government funds tuition, colleges save money. So why couldn't colleges use this excess money to create new financial aid programs that are specifically going to cover these external costs, and rather than tuition in the status quo? But finally, on their assertion that high-income families are disproportionately benefited, they don't really give any impact to this. We think that while our side benefits students of color and low-income students uniquely, there's no problem if higher-income students also benefit. That's a great thing. Ultimately, at our highest ground, we fully relieve the burden of student debt for all Americans, rectify historic racial and socioeconomic disparities, and stimulate the economy by adding millions of workers to the workforce. At our lowest, we guarantee a basic college education for millions of Americans who wouldn't otherwise receive one. At the point where our advocacy directly changes the status quo, we're so proud to affirm. Thank you.
First, I'd like to begin with a small clarification. The con is not advocating for remaining within the status quo. After all, the current educational system is broken. What we do want to prove is that going with free college will benefit those who don't need benefiting, those who are already rich and college-bound. The first thing to tell you in the first contention is that the cost of college is increasing student debt and that student debt perpetuates poverty. A few responses here. First, that the cost of college isn't increasing student debt, but rather it is non-tuition expenses. A report by New America, a US-based think tank, quantifies the majority of student loan debts are not geared towards the spending of tuition, but rather non-tuition costs that go towards college. Even with free college, students would still remain in debt, perpetuating the cycle of poverty caused by debt, showing there is no solvency in the pro-world on this issue. In addition, they also say that students of color are disproportionately impacted by the cost of tuition and debt. We can turn this argument, because if free college were to become a reality, the same students of color that the pro tells you they will be helping will actually be impacted by free college. As the pro said in case, they will help reduce racial inequality through free college, but in reality, it will only worsen inequality. As stated in our case, the majority of those who will be drastically impacted by free college are lower income students. However, if free college existed, it will only exacerbate the inequalities faced by African Americans, as they tend to make less income on average than the median household income. According to Gulliford of Courts in 2018, the average black household makes 90% less than that of the average white household, mirroring trends that have not been seen since the 1950s. The impact is that African Americans will face more inequality than their white peers in colleges, because on average, they make less. In addition, students of color are impacted with debt, but they struggle outside of college for other reasons. Quinton of The Atlantic concludes that African Americans may experience a lower return on their investment in education for a number of reasons that are not included to just debt, including a lack of access to social networks and discrimination in hiring. The impact of free college is that it will cause inequalities that will disproportionately impact African American students. In addition, they also say that free college will stop dropout and will increase completion rates, but this is false. Max Eden of the Manhattan Institute finds in 2016 that in the US, federal grants already make college free for a number of students at community colleges. Yet just 1/3 of students from the bottom quartile of income distribution who started college in 2003 had finished in 2009. Free college would not change the rate of lower income students that drop out, as many of them still have other obligations to help their families, such as jobs, that cause them to struggle with finishing school. The pro gave two impacts, that free college would decrease crime and increase the workforce, yet this goes off the assumption that those going to free college would finish college, which, as we have proved, free college does not inherently increase the level of completion. Once again, there is still no solvency for inequality in the pro world. The impact of free college is that it gives primarily to the rich. We should be advocating for a system that fights for the oppressed and lower income families, not rich families. The solution for a more just system is not making college free. Do you mind if I have the first question?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so basically in many open access educational systems, they use discriminatory practice to narrow down the field to the best of the best. For instance, in the K-12 educational system, they use the SAT and the ACT to keep lower income students from accessing college. So do you think the workforce would start to discriminate against graduates of free college?
Okay, no, I don't. Firstly, because I think that there are so many students who will be graduating from free colleges that it just doesn't make sense for them to discriminate against so many students.
Yes, but
Secondly,
there are a lot
we're
of students who graduate from like community college, and they're often discriminated against. You know,
Okay.
people choose people coming from higher quality, like
I
better, like private colleges.
Okay, I understand that, but even if you wanted to make this argument, which we would dispute simply on the basis that so many more students are going to be getting access to education, 22% more students, as we stated in case, that's just such a large number of students that discrimination probably isn't likely to happen. Even if you do want to make this argument, we think that they're still going to be significantly more eligible for so many more jobs, as I read to you in my rebuttal. But do you mind if I have the next question?
No problem.
All right, so currently financial aid spending on tuition is drying up college resources. And we gave you the analysis of how when the government funds tuition, colleges save money. So why couldn't colleges use this excess money to create a more new financial aid program to cover these external costs for students instead of like the current ones which cover tuition?
Okay, so college is like a business, right? Like the goal is to make as much money as possible. So if free college would become reality, colleges would start to jack up the prices of tuition as a means to gain more money for their school to increase the quality of things like, you know, like dorms and stuff like that. But that's why there need to be a need for price caps, which you mentioned in Cross that there's no real need for that. Like,
No, what we stated about price caps is that price caps are going to occur in either world. But your impact of price caps was really the significant part where you said, oh, well, it's going to lower the quality of education. What matters isn't the quality of the education in the long run. It's that these students get a degree so they're able to access the workforce at a much larger rate.
but the quality of an education matters inherently. I mean, it's the reason that parents go out of their way to choose schools for their kids that aren't even in their district. It matters to everyone.
Okay.
The quality of an education is
I
so
agree.
important. It's
But-
essential.
But in your world, these students aren't accessing any education in the status quo, so we think it's preferable to just have them access even a low-quality education that opens them up
Our
to the
advocacy is
workforce.
not sticking with the same system, which already disproportionately impacts lower-income families. Our advocacy is that we want to help lower-income students with programs like increasing financial aid and boosting the funding for free college. Thank you. For college.
All right. I'm going to go over the main arguments from today's debate, mainly being quality and inequality. So first, on their argument about quality of education, this argument, as my partner tells you, is contingent on their assertion that there will be price caps. There are two main problems here. As my partner says in rebuttal, price caps happen in both worlds, which means that no side has a solvency for this. But beyond that, what is empirically true is that any college education is better than none. Both sides agree that a college degree is a necessity in today's workforce. So our plan recognizes this by guaranteeing a college education to every possible student and thus easing their transition into the workforce. Beyond that, let's talk about inequality. So they tell you that making college free increases inequality because colleges will now start to prefer wealthier students over low-income students. The problem with this is this already happens in the status quo too. They don't explain to you why this happens uniquely in our world. Excuse me. In both worlds, people who are wealthier make advantages, take advantage. But on our side, we provide education to those who truly need it most. And education truly is a great equalizer and can help people who truly need it get the help into the workforce that they need. So beyond that, our opponents would tell you that eliminating tuition is insignificant. But as my partner said, we cannot let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Even though tuition doesn't cover the entire cost of attending college, it still takes up a significant portion of it. In our world, 2.5 million more Americans can afford to go to public college, as we are increasing accessibility by decreasing the cost to attend. But the second way we reduce inequality is through student debt, which brings me back to my main arguments. We are also preventing the creation of tuition-driven student debt moving forward, which already makes a difficult path to financial security for millions of young Americans, especially those who are impacted by inequity. Thus, we outweigh on magnitude because addressing racial and economic inequality is the utmost importance in this debate. Furthermore, affirming saves lives. Inequality quite literally kills, as we know that 1/3 of the deaths in this country are a result of inequality. So by implementing universal public college, we actively support those who truly need it. Universal public college promotes public welfare. Essentially, our advocacy is expanding the K-12 system to K through 16. It's time we realize that a college education is the new baseline for participation in this economy. And under our plan, we educate everyone in America simply because it's the right thing to do. And that's what this debate is really about, fulfilling a moral obligation to historically disadvantaged communities. And the best way to do that today is affirm. Thank you.
Everyone, recall our framework, which has gone relatively uncontested throughout the round. We believe it is the burden of the pro side to prove that free college is the best means to solve the college accessibility problem. In the status quo, financial aid is an underfunded system that is struggling to help the students who need it. My partner and I agree, not enough people are going to college, and that needs to be solved, but making college free is not the solution. We win this round because free college fails to solve for inequality that low-income students face. Recall what we told you, Jeff Abernathy of the LA Times. He tells you the entire concept of free college is inherently geared towards higher-income students. Costs such as dorms, transportation, and textbooks are in needing to help their families by getting a job would still be a burden on low-income families and make them unable to graduate. Free college is going to allow rich and white students to go to college for free, while low-income black students are still struggling to go to college. Our opponents conceded that high-income white students are the ones who are benefiting the most, therefore contradicting themselves when they tell you that they perpetuate poverty. Only fixing financial aid and providing college for the students that actually need it can solve this. Additionally, you're not going to want free college, as the quality of college will decrease for all students, as price caps as well as overpopulated classrooms, which our opponents never respond to, will force colleges to slash the salaries of teachers and fire employees in order to conform, decreasing the overall quality of education, making everyone less educated. The primary purpose of college is to prepare students for the workforce. Recall the New York Times study, which we told you that found many college students tested over 4 years showed no advancement in crucial skills, hurting their ability to be productive in the workforce. Voting for free college exacerbates inequality, as white and high-income students are getting an education they can already afford. We win this round on scope, as the consequences of free college for everyone negatively affect the 14 million students currently enrolled in public college, and the millions more who will attend public college in the future. Price caps will force colleges to cut programs and fire top professors, while simultaneously class sizes will increase by 22%, leaving colleges under-resourced and unable to prepare students for the workforce, negating their argument of economic participation. Next, you need to vote against free college, as it fails to solve the problem of low-income black students being unable to graduate. Our opponents keep telling you that we're sending more people to college. However, they are not graduating. All of their impacts about decreasing crime and helping them in the workforce are not applicable because they're not graduating. External costs and obligations will still be present in the pro world, and while a neg is better funding financial aid, will allow students who actually need it to receive free tuition, as well as the money they need for supplies and transportation to have a sufficient college experience. And for these reasons, we are proud to negate. We will now be taking questions from the audience.
Hi, my name's Lanice. I go to School Without Walls. We were talking a bit back here, and we were wondering what you guys' opinion would be on college being free up until your bachelor's degree, and then you pay to get a higher degree.
All right, I can start. So, like, personal opinions? Okay. All right, cool. So, I mean, I think that both sides of this debate really reflected some of the flaws in just saying, oh, free public college funded by the government for everyone, while at the same time really addressing some critical issues that really are problems with our society that need to be addressed. And so my personal opinion on that is that, while I believe that we should absolutely try to make college as accessible as we can, especially for these minority groups who are currently lacking access to it, I don't think that the way to do this is by just making college free for everybody. I think that there's a lot of reasons that were brought up in this debate that were also not brought up in this debate that are why it might not be the most effective thing to do that. For me personally, I think that a sliding scale of tuition costs for people to pay, for the wealthy to probably pay less because they can afford to pay, while for those who may not be able to afford it, of lower socioeconomic status, to obviously pay less for that and the wealthy to pay more. I think that that would be probably the most evenly balanced distribution. But I'm definitely open to other perspectives, and will admit I don't know everything about this as a high schooler myself. So yeah, that's just my opinion.
I guess I'll go next. So I'm not even going to lie. When I first got this topic, we flipped a coin. I was somewhat disappointed with the fact that I was on the con. But I've been doing research for the past couple of weeks, and honestly, like it's changed my mindset a bit on how free college will work if it does become a reality. I think that free college in it itself as a concept, it definitely has a lot of issues, and I feel that we do need to start providing free college for those who really do need it. Because we look at free college for everyone. It sounds like such a great idea, but then you see that it would benefit so many people like the rich and people who already are going to benefit whether or not there's free college or if there isn't free college. So I do think that if free college were to become reality, we really need to make it a reality for those who truly do need it, like lower income families, like minorities, like people like that who really do truly need to go to college.
I think everyone here would agree that we don't believe that one's economic status should define whether or not you can get an education. And I'm not sure. Again, I can't act like I know everything about this topic, but I do think that we need to find a way to make sure that people who really need it get the access to the education. And I think that's just the baseline we should consider.
Yeah, and I believe I'm sure the majority of people in this room feel that college debt is a burden and that not enough people are going to college. But I guess if we're talking about personal opinions, I sort of believe almost everything I said in my case. I think that financial aid needs to be morphed in a way to provide free college for the students who truly need it instead of just giving it to everyone. It's like we need to help the people who actually are in poverty and need a college degree to have success in their lives and to have sustainable wages in the future.
Hi, you all were great. My name is Delise Smith-Barrow. I'm an editor at the Hechinger Report, so we cover inequality and innovation in education. And the con side made a really good point in highlighting that free college doesn't really address college completion. Nationally, about 60% of college students graduate within 6 years. So college completion is a really big issue. So for the pro side, I want to know what your thoughts are on that. So how would you address college completion, not just getting people into school? And I know you don't know everything, so.
Yeah. All right, I was actually thinking about this, and we obviously had limited time in this debate, so I think that was something that was a little too big of an issue to fully cover. But I think that the thing is that people not graduating from college is going to occur in both worlds. Like, as you stated, like, it's occurring so widely in the status quo. And I think that becomes so problematic when we're thinking about things like this. So, like, my personal opinion is, yeah, I would agree that that's probably something that does become a bigger issue in our world. However, I think that when you're allowing more people the possibility of having that education, I think that when you're eliminating the cost, like one of the things that was referenced actually in their case, and I think actually in both of our cases, was how students are overworked because they're trying to work at the same time while they continue to work to earn a degree at the same time. And so that leads to them dropping out. And that's a major reason. 51% actually of college dropouts cite trying to work and these other financial costs as the reason that they dropped out. And so I think that is something that would be mitigated in our world because you're eliminating that burden of the tuition off of the students. And so thus you're eliminating some of that necessity to work at the same time as is present in the status quo.
You guys had a great debate. My name is Desmond. I also go to School Without Walls. And my question is, based on how necessary it seems to be college degree is required in the modern job market, do you think we should rely more often on private industry to fund college as opposed to the government?
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question? I didn't really hear the last part.
Should we rely more heavily on private industry as opposed to the government to help fund college for new students?
Could you give some examples of like what like what certain industries, like in the private sector, you would be considering to fund public college?
Well, for example, Amazon helping a student achieve a degree in computer sciences to work for them. Maybe, yeah, something like that.
I would definitely say government because private can be tricky. I think that, private can depend on their levels of giving and need depending on like the state of the economy, while the government, while that some of that impacts them, it tends to be a bit more consistent. I think in terms of consistency, I believe that the government would be the best way to go.
And I would agree with my fellow debater. I think even if it were to go to the private industry, I think it would have to be very regulated by the government. I don't think that it's quite. I think it's quite it's not consistent enough. I don't think to just give into the hands of the private industry. I know that like for-profit colleges and like online colleges are definitely take advantage of people who really need an education. And I think that because we've already seen that, I don't think we could just hand it over to the private industry. But I can see the need to fill in some of the resources there.
I agree completely with both of what they just said. I would like to add, though, that I think that encouraging, like, for example, the example you gave of Amazon trying to help these students get computer science, I believe was what you said, degrees, I think that that's really something that should be encouraged, especially with these massive corporations that have so much funds that they could really use to make such a big difference. I think that while there needs to be regulations, especially if you're trying to implement this on, like, a mass, entire, nationwide level, I think that there should be encouragement to make, whether that be donations, whether that be sort of even building programs to help these students, even outside of just funding tuition. I think that's something that should be encouraged as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great innovative idea to have private companies like that who have like these like massive revenues be able to like donate and like give back to the community in a way. But the primary issue why we don't have free colleges is just who's going to pay for it. Do we take money out of high schools and put it back? Is it state regulated? Do states pay for their own public colleges? Is it federal? There's just all these questions that are yet to be asked. It's just nobody wants to pick up the check. But private companies like Amazon, I think that'd be a great idea. I haven't read too much about it, but I think especially for those that they intend on hiring them in the future, why not start training them at a younger age out of high school and preparing them for a job in their company? I think that sounds like a great idea.
Good afternoon. I just want to congratulate you all. You did an excellent job, and
Thank you.
to your
Thank you.
coaches
Thank
as
you.
well. My name is Curtis Valentine. I come to this wearing 3 hats. I work at a think tank here called the Progressive Policy Institute, but I also sit on the school board where I live in Maryland, and I'm an adjunct professor. And so when my students don't come to class, or if they no longer come to class, it's because oftentimes they have to work or they can't pay for tuition. So I think it's important that once you all go to college, you all reflect back on this discussion and the impact. Secondly, I'll say I'm curious about whether you all studied any European models where income disparities and income inequality is much less, where you have free college in places like Poland and in Germany, where the government sees that if you don't pay for it on the front end, you're going to end up paying for it on the back end eventually. And so I just want to congratulate you all. I'll just highlight one thing we do in Maryland. We have universal community college, free community college for students in 11th and 12th grade. Where I am in our district, we actually have one of our high schools sits on our community college. And so 98% of the students in that school graduate with an associate's degree. And so that is one way that the state of Maryland has said we're going to pay for community college for any high school student who passes the entrance exam for 11th and 12th. And then you go into college as a junior, and it sets you off on a path. So I think, if you look at sort of middle college programs throughout the country, but also European models, that as a country, we have to say that this is the closest way, the best way to address income inequality in our country, because if you don't pay for it now, you're going to pay for it later.
We did look at a few European models while doing our research, both sides. We looked at England, Germany, places like that.
Let's give Charlie, Catherine, Caitlin, and Christian a round of applause.